Ambassador Veltar checked his ship's instruments one final time, as Earth's orbital station grew larger in the viewscreen. The Serenity's edge moved through space with the smooth precision that marked all Confederation vessels. 400 years of engineering refinement had produced ships that never failed, never surprised their pilots, and never deviated from expected performance parameters. His diplomatic mission was routine. Meet with Earth's representatives, discuss trade agreements, file the appropriate reports, and return to Confederation space. Simple, predictable, safe. The docking procedure went exactly as planned. Veltar's ship settled into the station's berth with barely a vibration. He gathered his diplomatic materials and prepared to meet the humans, expecting the usual formal exchanges that characterized first contact protocols. The meeting room was standard for such occasions. Representatives from both sides sat across a polished table, exchanging pleasantries and discussing preliminary trade possibilities. Veltar had participated in dozens of similar meetings across the galaxy. This one should have been no different. Then Chief Engineer Kim Minho arrived. The human entered the room with an energy that immediately caught Veltar's attention. Unlike the other Earth representatives who spoke in careful diplomatic language, Minho looked directly at Veltar with genuine curiosity burning in his eyes. "Incredible," Minho said, glancing toward the viewport where Veltar's ship was visible. "I've been studying your propulsion signatures since you entered our system. The energy efficiency is remarkable." Veltar felt a small surge of pride. "The Confederation has spent centuries perfecting our ship designs. The Serenity's edge represents our most advanced engineering." "The fusion matrix configuration must be fascinating," Minho continued, leaning forward with obvious interest. "I've never seen power regulation patterns like that. The way you manage plasma flow distribution is completely different from our approaches." The other diplomats shifted uncomfortably. Technology discussions were typically forbidden during first contact meetings. Too much risk of inappropriate information sharing. But Veltar found himself drawn to the human's enthusiasm. "You understand propulsion engineering?" Veltar asked. Minho's face lit up. "It's my specialty. I've spent 15 years working on fusion systems, but nothing as sophisticated as what you've got out there." He gestured toward the viewport again. "The theoretical models alone must be incredible." Something about the human's genuine fascination stirred something unexpected. In Veltar, in centuries of diplomatic meetings, no one had ever shown such authentic interest in the technical aspects of his ship. Most species focused on weapons capabilities or defensive systems. This human cared about the engineering itself. "Would you like to see the engine bay?" The words left Veltar's mouth before he could stop them. The room went quiet. Several diplomats from both sides exchanged worried glances. Showing alien technology to other species violated numerous Confederation protocols. Veltar should have known better, but Minho's reaction made the breach of protocol worthwhile. The human's eyes widened with the excitement of a child offered. "An impossible gift? Really? You would show me your ship's engines?" Veltar felt something he had not experienced in decades of routine diplomatic missions. Excitement. Here was someone who would appreciate the beauty of Confederation engineering, who would understand the elegant solutions his people had developed over centuries of refinement. "Just to observe," Veltar added quickly, trying to maintain some semblance of proper protocol. "You understand there are regulations about technology sharing?" "Of course," Minho agreed immediately. "I just want to see how you solved the plasma." Containment challenges. Our attempts at similar power levels always result in instability. As they left the meeting room, Veltar noticed the other diplomats watching with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. This was definitely not standard procedure, but something about the human engineer's enthusiasm had awakened a feeling Veltar thought he had lost long ago. Walking through the station corridors toward his ship, Veltar found himself genuinely looking forward to showing someone his vessel's most impressive features. The Serenity's edge was more than just transportation. It represented the pinnacle of his people's technological achievement. "Fair warning," he told Minho as they approached the airlock. "Our engineering philosophy prioritizes safety and reliability above all else." You might find our approaches somewhat conservative compared to human methods, Minho smiled. Conservative engineering that works is still impressive engineering. I'm just honored you're willing to share this with me. As they stepped aboard his ship, Veltar realized this simple diplomatic mission had already become something entirely unexpected. For the first time in years, he was about to see his own vessel through fresh eyes. The encounter that had begun as routine protocol was about to become something much more interesting. He had no idea just how interesting things were about to become. The engine bay of the Serenity's Edge hummed with quiet efficiency. Veltar watched with growing amazement as Minho moved through the space like he belonged there. The human's eyes tracked every component, every connection, every flow of energy through the sophisticated systems. "This is beautiful," Minho said softly, running his hand along a polished conduit. 4 centuries of refinement shows in every detail. Veltar felt proud. His people had indeed created something magnificent. The fusion cores operated at perfect stability. The plasma flows followed precisely calculated paths, and every safety system worked exactly as designed. But then Minho started asking questions. "Why do you throttle the plasma flow here?" The human pointed to a regulation node that managed power distribution. "This bottleneck reduces your overall efficiency." Veltar frowned slightly. "That system prevents dangerous power spikes. It has operated safely for hundreds of years." Minho nodded, but continued examining the components. "And these buffer systems here?" He indicated a series of safety modules. "They create significant energy waste." "Those buffers prevent catastrophic failure," Veltar explained, feeling defensive. "Safety is our primary concern." The human crouched down to examine the fusion core housing. His movements were careful and respectful, but his questions grew more pointed. "Your containment field strength is impressive, but you're only using 60% of your potential output." 60% is sufficient for all operational needs," Veltar replied. "Higher output levels would be dangerous." Minho stood up and looked directly at Veltar. Dangerous or just untested? The question hung in the air between them. Veltar had never considered there might be a difference. Confederation engineering eliminated risk by avoiding anything that might possibly fail. It was the foundation of their technological success. "Your people built this ship to never break down," Minho continued, his voice thoughtful. "That's incredible engineering. But what if it could do more than just survive? What if it could actually thrive?" Veltar felt uncomfortable. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Minho's eyes held that same spark of excitement from the meeting room. "Let me show you something. A few small adjustments, nothing that would damage your systems." Every instinct Veltar possessed screamed warnings, allowing an alien to modify. Confederation technology violated so many regulations he could not count them all. His career would be finished. His people would never forgive such a breach of protocol. But something about the human's enthusiasm was infectious. Minho looked at these engines not with the cold calculation of a potential enemy, but with the genuine appreciation of someone who understood beauty in engineering. "What kind of adjustments?" Veltar asked carefully. Minho moved to a control panel and began pointing out specific components. "Your power regulation systems are incredibly sophisticated, but they're designed to prevent any possibility of failure. What if we modified them to prevent failure while maximizing performance?" "That sounds contradictory." "Only if you think in binary terms," Minho replied with a grin. "Safe versus unsafe, conservative versus reckless. But there's a third option, controlled optimization." Veltar found himself drawn into the conversation despite his reservations. "Explain controlled optimization." "Your systems assume the worst-case scenario and build everything around preventing it," Minho said, his hands moving as he spoke. "We could keep all your safety measures but reconfigure them to be reactive instead of preventive. Reactive safety systems sound dangerous." "More dangerous than wasting 70% of your ship's potential?" Minho asked. "Your current setup is like having a racing engine but never shifting out of first gear because higher speeds might be risky." The analogy made Veltar pause. His ship was capable of incredible performance, but Confederation protocols had locked away most of that capability in the name of safety. What would these modifications involve? He asked, surprised to hear himself seriously considering the idea. Minho's face lit up with excitement. Nothing permanent, nothing that would damage your core systems. Just some adjustments to power flow management and safety response timing. If it doesn't work, we can put everything back exactly as it was. Veltar looked around his pristine engine bay. Everything was perfect, predictable, and safe. It was also limited, constrained, and operating far below its potential. You would need assistance, he said slowly. This is complex work. I have a colleague who specializes in power systems, Minho replied quickly. Park Hana, she's brilliant, with energy management. Veltar felt as though he stood at the edge of a cliff. Behind him lay the safe, predictable world of Confederation protocols. Ahead lay the unknown territory of human engineering philosophy. Small modifications only, he said finally. And if anything goes wrong, we stop immediately. Minho's smile was brilliant. You won't regret this. Your ship is about to show you what it was really designed to do. Veltar hoped the human was right, because he had just made a decision that would change everything. Park Hana arrived within an hour carrying a toolbox that looked like it had survived several small explosions. Her calm demeanor provided a sharp contrast to Minho's obvious excitement as they examined the Serenity's Edge's engine systems together. Fascinating design, Hana said, studying the power distribution networks. Everything is built for absolute reliability. No single point of failure anywhere. Veltar felt proud again until Hana continued speaking. But you're sacrificing enormous potential for that safety, she added, tracing conduit paths with her finger. It's like building a dam strong enough to hold back an ocean when you only need to manage a stream. Minho nodded enthusiastically. Exactly what I thought. Look at these plasma regulators. They're designed to handle 10 times their current load, but the control systems won't let them. Veltar watched nervously as the two humans began discussing modifications in rapid technical language. Their casual confidence with his sophisticated systems made him deeply uncomfortable. These were technologies his people had spent centuries perfecting, yet these humans talked about changing them as easily as adjusting a light switch. We start with the power flow management, Hana said, opening her toolbox. The bottlenecks are artificial, created by overly conservative programming. What exactly are you planning to do? Veltar asked, trying to keep worry out of his voice. Minho pulled out a handheld device that looked suspiciously improvised. We're going to reprogram your safety systems to be smart instead of just careful. Instead of preventing problems, they'll solve problems as they happen. That sounds extremely dangerous. Less dangerous than wasting your ship's potential, Hana replied, beginning to remove access panels from control systems. Your current setup is like wearing a suit of armor to take a shower. Protective, yes, but not very practical. Veltar watched in growing horror as Hana began bypassing safety circuits with casual efficiency. Sparks flew from control panels as she rerouted power connections using components that appeared to be held together with wire and determination. Stop, Veltar called out as Hana disconnected a primary safety interlock. That system prevents catastrophic fusion failure. No, Hana corrected gently, continuing her work. That system prevents the fusion core from operating above minimum safe levels. There's a difference. Minho was simultaneously working on the plasma distribution network, installing what could only be described as creative modifications to the flow regulators. Instead of the elegant Confederation components, he attached devices that looked like they had been assembled from spare parts. This is madness, Veltar muttered as more sparks filled the engine bay. You're destroying 4 centuries of engineering. Refinement. We're not destroying anything, Minho replied, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked. We're setting it free. The modifications took 3 hours. 3 hours of controlled chaos that violated every engineering principle Veltar held sacred. The humans worked with tools that looked improvised, using techniques that seemed to ignore basic safety protocols, implementing solutions that defied conventional logic. Hana reconfigured the inertial dampening systems using mathematics that made Veltar's head hurt. She somehow convinced separate systems to work together in ways their original designers never intended. Minho stripped limiters from the fusion cores and replaced them with adaptive controllers that responded to changing conditions instead of preventing all change. His modifications looked rough compared to Confederation precision, but they functioned with surprising elegance. Done, Hana announced finally, stepping back from a control panel that now displayed readings Veltar had never seen before. The engine bay hummed differently. Instead of the steady, predictable rhythm Veltar knew, the systems now produced a sound that seemed almost alive. Energy flowed through conduits with new intensity, and the fusion cores pulsed with barely contained power. The readings are impossible, Veltar said, staring at displays showing power levels that should not have existed. These numbers cannot be correct. They're correct, Minho assured him, wiping grease from his hands with obvious satisfaction. Your ship was capable of this performance all along. The limitations were artificial. Veltar looked around his engine bay, which now resembled a mixture of sophisticated Confederation technology and improvised human solutions. Jury-rigged components worked alongside precision-manufactured systems. Rough modifications functioned harmoniously with elegant original designs. Will it work? He asked, afraid of the answer. Hana and Minho exchanged confident glances. Only one way to find out, Hana said. Minho moved toward the pilot controls with obvious eagerness. Want to see what your ship can really do? Veltar felt as though he stood at the edge of an abyss. Everything he understood about proper engineering had been challenged in the past 3 hours. His perfectly reliable ship had been transformed into something unknown and unpredictable. But the excitement in the humans' eyes was impossible to ignore. They believed in what they had created. Small test only, Veltar said weakly. Veltar had piloted ships for over a century. He understood acceleration curves, inertial compensation, and the careful balance required for safe space travel. He thought he knew what controlled flight meant. He was completely wrong. The moment Minho engaged the modified systems, everything Veltar believed about spacecraft operation disappeared. The Serenity's edge did not accelerate away from Earth's orbital station. It exploded into motion like a bullet fired from a cannon. Hold on, Minho called out, his hands dancing across controls that responded with impossible precision. Veltar gripped his chair as acceleration forces that should have crushed them somehow felt perfectly manageable. Hana's modifications to the inertial dampeners created a bubble of stability around them, while the ship itself moved with terrifying speed. This is impossible, Veltar gasped, watching the station shrink to a dot behind them in seconds. We should be dead from the acceleration. Should be, yes, Hana agreed calmly from her monitoring station. But engineering isn't about what should happen. It's about making impossible things work anyway. They shot past Earth's moon in minutes, heading toward the asteroid belt at speeds that made Veltar's vision blur. The ship responded to Minho's touch like a living creature, turning and diving through space with fluid grace that defied physics. Look, ahead, Minho said with obvious excitement. Perfect testing ground. Veltar looked at the main display and felt his heart stop. They were approaching a dense asteroid field at impossible speed. Rocks the size of buildings floated in chaotic patterns, creating a maze that would challenge even the most skilled pilot at normal velocities. Slow down, Veltar shouted. We need to reduce speed before entering the field. Why? Minho asked, his hands steady on the controls. The ship can handle this. Before Veltar could protest further, they plunged into the asteroid field like a comet diving into chaos. Rocks flashed past the view screen so quickly they became blurs of gray and brown. The ship twisted and turned through impossible gaps, dancing between obstacles with movements that should have torn it apart. The structural integrity should be failing, Veltar cried, watching stress readings that painted the displays in warning colors. Should be, Hana acknowledged, her voice steady despite the insane maneuvers. But look at the actual structural data, not just the warnings. Veltar forced himself to focus on the real-time measurements instead of the alarm systems. Somehow, impossibly, The ship's frame held together despite forces that exceeded all design specifications. The modifications had not just improved performance, they had transformed the entire vessel into something new. Minho guided them through a series of turns that violated basic physics. They spiraled around asteroids in patterns that created artificial gravity, used rock formations as launching points for direction changes, and threaded through gaps barely wider than the ship itself. "This is beyond piloting skill," Veltar said, in wonder. "The ship is responding to your intentions before you even input commands." "Adaptive response systems," Minho replied, pulling them through a corkscrew turn around a spinning asteroid. "The modifications made your ship smart enough to predict what needs to happen. They emerged from the asteroid field traveling even faster than when they entered. Instead of the careful, measured flight patterns Veltar knew, they moved through space with the fluid grace of a dancer, every motion perfectly controlled despite the incredible forces involved. "Try the combat maneuvers," Hana suggested. "Test the enhanced response systems." Minho's eyes lit up with dangerous enthusiasm. What followed was a display of aerial acrobatics that redefined Veltar's understanding of what spacecraft could do. They performed loops and rolls that created artificial weather inside the ship, dove and climbed in patterns that painted impossible trajectories across the starfield. The Serenity's edge moved like it was alive, responding to challenges with creative solutions that emerged from the interaction between Confederation precision and human innovation. When they encountered gravitational anomalies, the ship surfed them like waves. When they faced complex navigation problems, it found elegant solutions that combined efficiency with artistry. "I don't understand," Veltar said, tears streaming down his face as they danced through space with impossible beauty. "How is this possible?" "Your people built a perfect foundation," Minho explained, his voice filled with respect. "Centuries of refinement created systems capable of incredible things. You just needed someone willing to let them try. We were so focused on preventing failure that we prevented success," Veltar realized. For the first time in his life, Veltar understood what it meant to truly fly. Not just move through space, but dance with it, play with it, become one with the infinite possibilities that surrounded them. The modified ship carried them through maneuvers that combined Confederation reliability with human audacity, creating something entirely new. Something that worked not despite the differences between their engineering philosophies, but because of them. Flying had never felt like freedom before. Now Veltar wondered how he had ever accepted anything less. As they slowly returned toward Earth's orbital station, Veltar sat in stunned silence. The Serenity's edge now moved with a grace he had never imagined possible. Every system hummed with controlled power, responding to commands with elegant precision that made his old flying experience seem clumsy and limited. The journey back gave him time to think about what had just happened. Everything he had believed about engineering, about safety, about the proper way to build and operate spacecraft had been challenged in the span of a few hours. "Your people," he said finally, breaking the comfortable quiet that had settled over the bridge. "You approach problems differently than we do." Minho and Hana exchanged glances before Minho responded. "We calculate risk differently, yes, but not carelessly." "Explain the difference," Veltar requested, genuinely curious. Hana leaned back in her chair, considering her words carefully. "Your safety systems assume the worst possible outcome and build everything around preventing it. That works, but it also prevents your systems from reaching their potential. We look at the same worst-case scenario," Minho added, "and ask ourselves, how do we make this work anyway? Instead of avoiding problems, we solve them." Veltar thought about this approach. "Controlled recklessness? Calculated optimization," Hana corrected with a smile. "There's a difference between taking stupid risks and taking smart ones." The station grew larger in their view screen, but Veltar found himself reluctant for this experience to end. "My people have spent centuries perfecting our technology. We eliminated every possible source of failure. And in doing so, you eliminated most sources of excellence," Minho observed gently. Perfect safety often means perfect limitation. Veltar considered his own career, his own people's achievements. They had indeed created marvels of reliability and precision. Their ships never failed. Their systems never broke down. Their operations never produced unexpected results. But they also never surprised anyone, never exceeded expectations, never discovered what might be possible beyond the boundaries of careful planning. The modifications you made, Veltar said slowly, they should not work. By every principle of proper engineering, combining our systems with your improvised components should create instability. Should, yes, Hana agreed. But engineering isn't just about following rules. Sometimes it's about understanding why rules exist and when they can be safely broken. Minho nodded enthusiastically. Your foundational technology is incredible. 4 centuries of refinement created systems capable of amazing things. But you buried that capability under layers of safety protocols. We freed your ship to show you what it was really designed to do, Hana added. As they approached the docking bay, Veltar realized something profound had changed in his thinking. He had always viewed engineering as a process of eliminating variables, controlling outcomes, preventing surprises. These humans had shown him that engineering could also be about embracing possibilities, solving challenges, creating opportunities. Would you be willing to share these techniques with the Confederation? He asked, surprising himself with the question. Both humans looked pleased by his request. Of course, Minho replied immediately. That's what engineers do. We solve problems together. Knowledge belongs to everyone, Hana added, especially knowledge that makes things work better. Veltar thought about how his people would react to these modifications. The conservative Confederation Council would be horrified by the apparent recklessness of human engineering approaches, but the results spoke for themselves. His ship now operated at levels of performance that exceeded every specification. There will be resistance, he warned them. My people value stability above innovation. Change is always difficult, Minho acknowledged. But sometimes the biggest risk is refusing to take any risks at all. The docking procedure proceeded smoothly, though Veltar noticed the enhanced responsiveness of his controls made the process feel almost effortless. Systems that had always required careful attention now seemed to anticipate his needs. Will you visit the Confederation? Veltar asked as they prepared to part ways. To demonstrate these techniques directly? If you invite us, Hana replied. We'd be honored to learn more about your engineering traditions, and to share what we've learned about pushing boundaries safely, Minho added. As the humans gathered their tools and prepared to leave his ship, Veltar felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. He was returning to his people with technology that violated numerous protocols, but delivered unprecedented results. More importantly, he was returning with a new understanding of what engineering could accomplish when precision met audacity, when reliability embraced innovation, when the desire to prevent failure balanced with the courage to pursue excellence. The Serenity's edge would never be the same. Neither would Veltar. Sometimes the greatest discoveries came not from having all the answers, but from having the courage to ask, what if we tried something that seemed impossible? His ship now hummed with the answer to that question, and it sounded like the future.